Act 1, Episode 5, The Pillaging of Spinnaker. As the Queen and her escort flee the planet to avoid capture, the citizens are left to fend for themselves. Militias made up of police officers and volunteers rapidly assemble and try to form an effective resistance. Meanwhile, the Trade Federation is eager to reclaim the shipments of plasma they have been promised. Desperate to make up lost profits, Newt Gunray has OM9 remotely oversee the invasion of Spinnaker. As the main hub for storing plasma and doubling as a minor refinery, it is packed to capacity with fresh, raw plasma ready for export through the spaceport. Ironically, it was funded by the Trade Federation as part of the agreement, and they know it very well. Planet-wide communication has fallen. Apart from short-range communication and old-school radios, nothing else works. The holonet is no longer accessible either. Runners in flash speeders keep the underground in touch and haphazard resistance strings across the main continent. The players and many resistance fighters have fallen back to Spinnaker to secure as much inert plasma as possible and deny the rest for the Trade Federation. Resistance characters, or at least resistance adjacent, find themselves stuck in the turmoil. Naboo is a fairly wealthy planet, and substantial reward is offered once the occupation ends to those willing to fight for them. Some may do it for the money, some for the cause. Regardless, they are in it together. These characters are tasked with stealing or sabotaging as much plasma as possible. Trade Federation characters are tasked with acquisition of as much plasma as possible, securing the space stations for occupation, and quelling the resistance. Resistance fighters are literally underground in one of the many labyrinth-like tunnels that web underneath the oldest cities of Naboo from its many royal wars that took place during its ancient history. Some have been rediscovered and are now in use to thwart the Trade Federation. Officer Falere of the Naboo Police was tasked with the Trade Federation invasion as a priority issue. The previous investigation regarding drug and plasma smuggling was still a problem, and likely to develop further under the cover of invasion. She was tasked with a secret mission to gather data and tracking on the potential plasma smugglers. Officer Kitty Meow Meow, who had assisted her in the previous investigation taking down Dragon Tails, was assigned to do the same. On the flip side, some less scrupulous characters were contacted by the various syndicate operatives on the planet. Lob, the engineer from before with Trade Federation ties, was contacted by the Black Sun Syndicate to smuggle inert plasma to them amongst the chaos. He agreed, and came up with a plan to make a small amount vanish during the transfer. He was still recovering from the pacemaker surgery he just had and needed the resources. Jeff, the spice maker, was contacted by the Pike Syndicate. They also wanted the plasma, and offered him a job as a spice maker with a state-of-the-art lab if he could succeed. He too made a plan to discreetly lose a barrel or two and go unnoticed. Dragon Tail, formerly known as Dragon Tails before his Loku was blown off, had recovered and got a prosthetic. Not only that, he had managed to not get identified as a criminal thanks to the reports from the dirty officer reporting him as dead after dumping his body. He got a masterful disguise in place. He too got contacted, but this time by the Hutt cartel. The plasma on Naboo is the purest in the galaxy. Everyone wanted a slice. He got an offer as a spice runner with his own ship if he could succeed. A few plans were hatched. Boba Tea made her appearance again, this time as a hired gun for the Naboo. Mariek secretly tasked her with keeping an eye on the Gungan Mandalorian. She was not sure she could trust him or not, but they needed all of the help they could get. Lastly, the mysterious Gungan returns. He was offered a job by Mariek discreetly. Her nephew, Gregor Typho, was too young to fight. However, his family had a proud history of serving the Royal Guard, particularly in time of need. She wanted to keep an eye on him and keep him safe. He had a bad tendency to slip out and cause trouble. This was a test for him. If he showed he could put the people of Naboo before himself, she would do all in her power and influence to help alleviate the massive racist hostility between the Naboo and him being a Gungan. The brutal war 92 years prior still left a lot of tension between the two civilizations. He had already ran into countless refugees and guards giving him the barest of supplies and courtesies. He agreed. Assembled in a loose sense of the term, they found themselves milling around a bunch of refugees in the underground network. Injured people were constantly streaming in and supplies were already being stretched to their max, yet more kept coming. Dragon Tail immediately spotted 2 of the 3 anti-spice commandos that caught him and began panicking. Trying as hard as he could not locate the 3rd one. He was incredibly sure she was going to shoot him in the head again, and quickly double-checked his disguise. My players chose to come up with a plan to steal plasma using flash speeders and sabotaging the bulk of the reserve in and around the refinery. The idea was to strap as many barrels of inert plasma as possible to each flash speeder, and then while they made their delivery, activate a few more to use as weapons, and then breach the cargo containers. The blasts wouldn't set it off because the plasma is inert, but it would spill them and spoil the product, not to mention make a big hazmat issue for the soon-to-be occupying Trade Federation army. They spoke with Meriek Panaka, who was leading the resistance cell, and acquired all of the explosives they had remaining. 2 thermal detonators and 4 repulsor spikes for stopping speeding speeders was all they had left. All that was left was to select a team and form battle groups. Some various officers volunteered to run with them to get civilians to safety and hide the tunnel entrances, but it was mostly the better equipped of the resistance that would handle the plasma. Immediately at random, Officer Falere selected Dragon Tail and Jeff. Jeff was unaware that he had been hunted at all last game session thanks to the show put on by Dragon Tail and was completely unfazed. He was nominated to be one of the pilots. Dragon Tail, on the other hand, sweated profusely but kept his cool this time as he got in the police speeder. Officer Kitty Meow Meow, the Cather, took the other 4. The plan was simple. They would arrive at the destination, load up the speeders, and send them back. They estimated they could make 2 runs before the massive Trade Federation army bore down on them. While the speeders were running plasma, the rest of them would assist in charging the necessary barrels and prepping explosives. They arrived quickly on scene and did so well. They were even ahead of schedule. As the randomly chosen pilots went back, Lob and Jeff lost a barrel each at their drop points. They realized they were both stealing plasma for someone, but didn't know who the other one was stealing it for. But they kept their mouths shut, winked, and headed back to the cargo area. The rest of the team headed to the refinery. It was abandoned with an unknown supply of inert and charged plasma inside. Falere started prepping a barrel of plasma to be charged. Only she fumbled. She forgot to latch the plasma lid and enclosure doors. Watching it slosh and spark, she dived behind an abandoned blast shield just in the nick of time. Dragon Tail, on the other hand, was not fast enough and got thrown across the room. He was still alive, but not thrilled. His hand prevented his facial disguise from being blown off by getting burned instead. She searched around and found a manual of operations. Following this procedure, the rest of the team safely began charging barrels and carrying them to their destinations. With careful planning, they only needed to use the 2 thermal detonators and 1 mine, leaving the rest for deployment along the road. The drivers came back, got loaded up, and left again. Once again, a barrel each was lost. Quiet and consistent, the math could easily just said to have been 1 off for each load and no one would be the wiser. The team got the last of the barrels in place. As the speeders were coming back, the forward elements of the army arrived. One street had 2 Staps cruising in, while the one on the other side had a pair of them as well. A trio of Staps approached from another road, converging on the refinery. The players were ready for the Trade Federation. The ambush sprung suddenly, with blaster bolts taking down one of the first pair. Kitty Meow Meow jumped on the second one, kicking the droid off. The sudden 300 pounds of angry space cat was too much for the speeder, and she failed her pilot check. A moment later she crashed into the building and bounced off of it with a sharp oomph. On the other side, the 2 Mandalorians joined fire, taking down a Stap. They were joined by the other characters, but some strafing fire injured Boba T. Despite this, they took down all but 2 of the 5 converging on their corner. As the 2 whizzed past, Kitty Meow Meow was getting back on her feet and heard them coming. She got a running start, throwing her vibrospear at one, but missed. They scored a hit on her, but one was gunned down by a team effort. As the last one tried to turn around and race away, Kitty charged it and sliced it in half with her vibro sword. The speeders arrived. Deciding they could do one more partial load under fire, some of the team started fighting while others loaded. They had to have enough seats left to get out of there, but the Gungan and Lob volunteered to get out on foot. As soon as they were getting ready for the next droids, the Gungan noticed Typho climbing out of the trunk with a stolen blaster. He tranquilized him and put him back in. Boba Tea made note of this, but it wasn't a violation of his safety, so she carried on. Thankfully, Lob knew of the Trade Federation preferred routes for their large bulk carriers and had a good idea of where they were coming in from next. The whole team was able to get into ambush again. Each side had a squad of B-1 battle droids marching in. Lob ignited the ones on his side using an oil slick. As they ran out of the oil, Dragon Tail nailed them with an ion grenade and finished them all off. The other side was trickier. The Gungan, who has not introduced himself yet, started by throwing a vibroaxe at the droid lieutenant. It lodged into its chassis, doing massive damage. In turn, the whole squad fired on the only target they could see. He was hit 3 times, one of them critical. Actually, they were all natural 20, only one confirmed. The Gungan immediately fell back and began loading barrels with his one remaining hit point, wheezing smoke and reeking of ozone. The rest of the team on that side began firing pot shots at them. An excellent series of shots from Boba Tea took out the lieutenant while the others began picking off droids. The shootout was getting tough. The droids had good armor and numbers on their side. The characters had cover but were out of special weapons and ammunition. Falere using hacktivation, and subsequently obliterated one of the B-1 droids. The rest went down despite some more characters getting shot up a bit. While this was going on, Lob and Jeff were trying to load heavy 55-gallon drums with their -1 strength modifiers. Jeff got one barrel lip on the speeder wing. Lob assisted by pushing it back off on accident. Jeff then failed drastically and pulled it onto himself, crushing him for 6 damage. Lob immediately threw the barrel off of him, rolling a natural 20 and placing it perfectly on the speeder without realizing it. They tried again, with mixed success. As characters were getting shot up, they showed up to help. Eventually, as the last few droids closed in firing on the speeders, they were ready. Immediately, Dragon Tail enacted his plan. He stole a police speeder, in front of 2 police officers, and the whole team. Jeff didn't know what was going on, but he jumped in before he got away. He then rolled a natural 2 for convincing everyone he was trying to stop him and failing. The rest of them had to kick a barrel off and then ride away. While they did this, the Gungan slipped off into a passageway, carefully making sure he wasn't followed. The Duro's engineer, Lob, went into the refinery and triggered the emergency containment protocols, effectively ruining the supply inside the refinery and shutting it down. Getting it back online was going to take hard work. He too slipped off discreetly. Dragon Tail raced off with his new friend, the spice maker he never met. They still did not realize this. They made an agreement to split the shipment. Jeff took his 2 barrels and then slipped back to base where he was promptly arrested and interrogated. His story was mostly confusing and hard to follow, natural 20, but now that some barrels were missing they were looking into the count more closely. Barrels went missing prior to this, when he and Lob were piloting them. Lob was arrested too. Neither broke and kept their stories up and were stuck in a state of limbo with police doing good cop bad cop. While this was going on, Dragon Tail made his drop and decided to cut his losses. He wanted to race out into the countryside and lay low. However, he immediately ran into a stat patrol and began taking fire. He maneuvered poorly, and then rolled a natural 1 to evade. Dragon Tail crashed his flash speeder but made an excellent tumble to avoid taking damage. The next strafing run though saw all 3 stabs nail him with fire, including a critical. Once again, he made his death saves. A local farmer found him and had a tough time deciding where to take him. Theed was overrun, but so was Spinnaker. Chosen at random, he took him to the Spinnaker underground resistance. At first Dragon Tail went unnoticed. But Officer Falere had been tracking the speeders in the event they were stolen or went off course during plasma shipments. She tracked his down and found a blown-off Loku. This sounded familiar. She asked around, rolled a natural 20, and bumped into the farmer who had found Dragon Tail right away. He took her right back to him and identified him in the Bacta tank. He now sported 2 prosthetics and was not fortunate enough to have the previous one hit instead. His disguise gone, he was recognized immediately. Falere pulled out her dossier for her last case where they busted him and realized he had accomplices. Using the wrong data to reach the right conclusion, she found several things out. 1. The dirty cop was probably lying about Dragon Tail getting killed while fighting her when the others were gone. This needed to be looked into further. 2. Dragon Tail was supposed to meet someone. Someone just worked with him to steal plasma. Plasma had been stolen previously as well. Most likely, Jeff was his contact as a spice maker. Lob was a probable suspect, but less likely so. They were not sure how he fit into it, but he was stealing plasma as well. It was possible there was a second accomplice, or this was part of a bigger crime ring. For uncovering such a massive set of crimes and getting suspects into custody, Falere was promoted to sergeant. She also got access to a high-powered rifle. She found she had a knack for sniping and was looking forward to using this skill set. Boba T was awarded the Naboo weapons permit she was promised with a powerful sidearm. No more getting stuck or arrested for carrying weapons to and from the planet. The Gungan had the Panaka's blessing for being a resistance member. This massively reduced the amount of racism he was running into immediately. He received a rifle from Evidence to help him become a more rounded combatant.